right. We're
Yes.
gonna shine. All right.
Yeah.
We should be up and running. Yep, I think so. Check for me. Make sure we're good.
I'm going
There we
to
go.
the YouTubes. I see it says it's coming.
Excellent. Yeah.
People are in the chat. I was the second like.
Oh.
Pretty happy about that.
Now, Johnny Million, you know, one of the things I
Hey,
run into,
Hal.
and welcome to the show. How are you, by the way, my friend?
I'm doing great. We've been chatting, so
We
it
have.
doesn't feel like we're just saying, yeah.
No, not just starting a radio show. We've been rolling through some of our stuff, discussing that we need to, after all this madness is gone, have a movie night, and that, you know, obviously this show in a more peaceful time will be transferred into what, but I guess peacetime activities of, you know, rambling
I like
about hair metal and the like, which I think is totally valuable. And thanks to everybody, by the way, who tuned in from the Patreon on my live stream of the Flapper show last night. A good time was had by all. I gotta say that was a fun show, and Erica Rhodes came up and did her, you know, practice her set she's going to be doing for America's Got Talent right before, and Adam Ferrara came up and did a set and he killed. He was great, and then Charlene opened
Nice.
and hosted and she was terrific as always and fantastic. I love, you know, as an older comic, supporting the young whippersnappers, and so a lot of whipping and snapping. And if you know what I'm saying, I have no idea. So, but I will say, like, you know, I said last night to our Patreon folks, I was like, I don't know what you're watching, but if you have Netflix, I will put whatever I say on stage right up against any Netflix special you see. I didn't have a prepped show. I improvised those shows. I just go with whatever I'm feeling like talking about. And I was like, and that's a bold statement, ladies and gentlemen. That is, you know, increasingly less bold because of the quality of what they'll hand out. But still, and certainly I wouldn't include Joe Rogan's in there because it's not, it's strictly speaking, a comedy special. It's more like a Cliff Notes of the podcast done in a more angry, exaggerated, sweaty form. Yeah.
I remember watching Joe Rogan stand up maybe in 2007.
I know exactly what
And
you're
he was
talking about.
funny.
Yeah, he was all right. Yeah, and most of it was like, look at how butch I am, kind of, you know.
Yeah, and like,
stuff. But
you know, and it was a little confessional, like admitting to like, you know, the embarrassment of masturbation, and like, it was like fun and relatable, and even
Right.
Lisa liked it.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like pre 9/11 Dennis Miller. There is
Yeah.
there are a group of people who were changed by certain moments in American history, and there was no going back. And in the case of Dennis Miller, you can there's pre 9/11 Dennis Miller and post 9/11 Dennis Miller. It is nothing has been more stark. As a New Yorker, I guess, even though he was living, I believe, in Montecito at the time, in California, right outside of Santa Barbara, in a very schmancy house right next to Marianne Williamson. Yes, they were neighbors. Yes, I got into a shouting match because he swore in front of Marianne's daughter, who was 4 at the time, something like that. So, you know, history there. And but there was a very distinct change. And there's some folks where you can tell they're so committed to this ride that they're never going back. That there's never this point where they're going to go, you know what? I overreacted. I went way too far down this QAnon rabbit hole. And the old Roseanne is back. You know what I mean? That's not going to happen.
It's so crazy because, like, one of the things that I have learned along the way in all my mistakes that I've made is that no mistake is worth holding on to just because you spent a long time making it.
Right. I mean, that's the key to maturity in a relationship most of the time. It's like, I'm still mad about something I was wrong about, but that they thought I was wrong about, but I felt right about it at the time. You know, that's you could almost sum up MAGA in that right now, because so many of their arguments are based on a real fear based on fake information. To
Yep.
that would be why Gary Busey is a pivotal character in our Marvel timeline, because of his old, hey, I want everybody to know that fear is just, hey, listen, false evidence that appears real. Understand that. And I don't know if you famously recall him saying that all the time for about a year and a half, because I guess his shrink told him this, for real.
No,
But
I know where he got it.
yeah, from where?
He got it from the
AA,
rooms.
huh? For where?
Yeah, he got it from the rooms.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that is the essence these days of MAGA world. And it's curious because there's a special aspect of the evidence that right wingers use as validation for their feelings, their common sense response. Because Donald Trump lately, I don't know if you've seen this, Johnny, but has been trying to dovetail his conversation about MAGA and the Republican Party to, we're just the party of common sense. We're just common sense. He did this. He started this about a year and a half ago, just kind of testing the waters, and now he says it almost every time. And the reason he's saying this, the specific reason he's saying this is because he crapped the bed on Roe v. Wade, and now they're trying to paint their position as normal. Let the states decide is the common sense idea, and that everybody wanted to get rid of this. Everybody, Democrats, Republicans, women, men, incest victims, and women in the middle of an ectopic pregnancy sitting in the parking lot of a hospital in Oklahoma, hoping they won't just let her die for Jesus. Everybody. They all wanted it they wanted Roe v. Wade gone. This is what he's saying. And his argument is, we're the party of common sense. They call it conservative, whatever. It's common sense.
He says like, our legal scholars wanted it gone. It was a really bad law. Nobody liked this law.
Right. And now it's all calmed down, and it's back at the states where it should be, and it's really not going to be an issue this fall. He's actually said this out loud, which is one of the funniest dumb things he says. If it didn't have such a horrifying impact on women's lives, it'd be a lot funnier when he says it. But he's been going on this whole common sense shtick lately.
Well, he even told a reporter that he was going to vote in Florida. He was going to vote to allow was it IVF?
Well,
is that what's on the bill in Florida?
There's a bill in Florida that sets the limit on abortions at 6 weeks.
Oh, right. He thinks it's too short because, every now and then, there's a little brain in there.
No, there isn't. No, there's not.
No, there is because even when the NRA was a big deal, he's like, "Why are you afraid of the NRA?" He didn't care at first until people told him to care.
Well, in the case of the NRA, he's like, they're always on our side. What are they going to do? Go to the other side? He felt like they were trapped activists, which they kind of are in the Republican world. They can't go anywhere else, right? They could stand down and then get mad at you, but once you're in, And what are they going to, the NRA never changes horses midstream. If you make it to the election or you even make it through the primary, they have to back you. The NRA is never going to drop the Republican Party and go for an independent or somebody else, knowing full well it will guarantee the Democrat gets through. It is an absolute trap, and they know it. So he's aware of that. It is not true of evangelicals. And famously, Donald Trump got 81% of the evangelical vote in 2016. After everybody else in the Republican Party got about 71 to 76%, something like that. He got this 5% bump that was pivotal in a bunch of areas. It meant largely that those folks, in many ways, voted for the first time. It wasn't that that was the only area where he got people up off the bench and got them involved in voting again. And he needs them because that's his new baseline. And one of the lessons he did not learn was that when you attract those people, you lose some other folks. This is just a reality in politics. If you got a chunk of your base that are hardliners, and the hardliners in anybody's base need to know this, that if you try to hold your candidates' feet to the fire, which is a torture metaphor that sucks. Shame on anybody who actually uses it. Think of what it's. I mean, that's the Inquisition. We will hold your feet to the fire until you do what we say. Like, it's what a grotesque notion, right? But if you make them do that, there's an ROI that every politician knows, that if they can only go so far with their activist class, that if they cross a certain line, they lose enough independence where those people cease to matter. And the extremists on our side of the aisle are learning that this time. And they're learning it the hard way. And you could largely look at the sort of scattered activism that was outside the DNC this time. After expecting a giant 1968 kind of like uprising, which makes no sense since the party of 1968 and the Democrats was just starting to shed the Dixiecrats, who would become the most racist Republicans, that the uprising around that, it was because Democrats at that time were the Republicans. It was just a hot swap that happened. And so the people who were protesting were effectively real Democrats. Many of the people who were protesting at that time are now sitting Congress people, got involved in politics, are politicians of color, who are the primary reason why the DNC, besides the Vietnam War, also were being protested. Okay. None of those apply to the modern Democratic Party. None of them. You can say that they don't go far enough in certain areas, and you can go, we need to hold the line for Medicare for all, let's say. But if it meant losing the ACA and 24 million people not having the coverage they now have, many of whom's lives have been saved, and you're like, look, you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs, morally, ethically, you're no different than the Republicans, right? Screw the people who will have, I would rather go down swinging than have incremental success. Is only a belief system if you feel safe with during that process, and you are using those people that need that help as human shields to try and leverage people. Now that's and you can tell by the people who are outside. There's kind of a smattering of people from different issues, many of whom, by the way, were holding up signs about issues that were actually being supported during the DNC by speakers at the DNC on a level that they never have before, highlighted specifically, especially women's rights. There were many people in the marching and the groups that were outside the DNC that were holding up women's rights signs. And you're like, where were you guys at the RNC? Same thing with quite frankly, a lot of the I would say it was a mix. I was about to say pro-Palestinian, but quite frankly, there were so many paid agitators there that Netanyahu and Trump support that were showing up just to make it look like there's division and fighting and that kind of stuff. And by the way, I appreciate them half-assing it. I don't know how much they got paid, but they clearly thought it wasn't enough to cause, to go to jail for any significant amount of time. So bless their hearts. They went down there, cashed their check, and went home. I stood there with a sign. That was my quota. Bye. So, but none of them showed up at Mar-a-Lago when Netanyahu was there for 6 hours discussing how they'll turn Gaza into a parking lot as soon as Trump gets in. None of them showed up at Bedminster when he was meeting with similar people, and none of them are circling Jared Kushner's built office building wherever he sets up shop, and none of them were at the RNC. Except to get paid, I suppose. Maybe that's where they picked up their check. Sure. But none of them were outside protesting the actual people who believe that, as Donald Trump says, you gotta finish the problem, right? So the extremists on our side and the faux extremists, and again, you have to kind of, those are in a separate category. The faux extremists, notwithstanding, the extremists on our side recognize that the party is addressing these issues even if you don't think they're going far enough. So that you're being heard, but you're not getting everything you want. That's democracy, and we're dealing with it. That's why the Democratic Party is the big tent party right now and has a lot of disparate voices in it. Trump is trying to do the same thing after creating an all-extremist party. Trump has has done everything he can to purge every rhino, as they call him, out of the party, to make everybody who just wants to be a run-of-the-mill, even just to get, anybody who's voted for an infrastructure bill or would have voted for the border bill, for example, as as somebody that needs to be purged as disloyal. And then all of a sudden, in the last since Kamala Harris has started to move forward in a lot of ways, and by the way, the same thing would have happened with Biden as the race got narrower, and then Biden overtook him going into the fall. That as Trump is confronting that, the thing that he is struck by, and we got to take a break. We'll be back in just 1 minute. You're listening to Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide. The thing that Trump is struck by is the voting, the get out the vote numbers look terrible for Republicans right now. Terrible. I guess.
Yeah, they're going to stay home.
Yeah, and I guess telling your voters not to trust voting isn't the best GOTV strategy. We'll be back right after this.
Or it's like a charm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let me try to get this up there. There you go. And I'm bringing up a couple of stories. Yeah. Yeah, we've all that Arlington stuff has happened between the last time we spoke. Since the last time we spoke.
That just keeps getting worse.
Ugh.
Favorite thing is how he knows absolutely everything about everything going on in the world around. Something goes really wrong, and he had no idea.
Oh yeah. Whoops. Froze up. Yeah.
And the thing that you pointed out one time a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
When he's describing that, and he's like, and then they were like, "Sir, could you please pose for a picture with us?" And, "Sir, could you do this?" And I was like, "Oh my God, there it is."
Right, but well, we'll talk about that, the sort of blame game, when we come back, because that's
in the family.
It what runs in the family?
I said, let's blame the family.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
And they wanted me there.
Yeah, it is. Like the. Well, yeah, I'll save it for the air because. And by the way, hi chat room, hi everybody, hello. Don't worry, Republicans. Kamala will be president for all Americans. It's true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let Donald keep telling maggots he doesn't need any more votes, says Spicy Dragon. That's exactly right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So beyond telling, as we just one of our lovely folks in the chat just said, Trump keeps telling all the maggots that he doesn't need any more votes. Right? They got plenty of votes. Don't worry about it. Which is a genius plan going into with voting starting in about 2 weeks. Right? I don't need them, and you can't trust mail-in voting, and whatever. All of that. Johnny, you and I were talking about how we hadn't spoken since the Arlington Cemetery stuff happened.
Right.
For those that don't know, here's the Cliff Notes. Donald Trump went to a laying of a wreath of the unknown soldier and a visit to the grave sites on the anniversary of the Afghanistan withdrawal with a couple of families, 3 of them, I think, of the fallen soldiers that died there, who are still, like MAGA people and support him. Whereas, it wasn't like all the families were there. It wasn't all the wounded were there. It wasn't, it was a select few. But he and his campaign organized this with these multiple families, in some cases arranging for them to be flown in for it. And he went to this laying of a wreath, and then he went to the grave sites, and then he took odd thumbs up pictures, standing over a tombstone.
Really, just such bad luck.
Yeah. There's always that,
You
that
could have at least like thrown the horns,
like the girl next to him. Did you see her?
No.
Yeah, the girl standing with him throws the horns. And
Oh my God, I'm making
forward
that
like
up.
this.
I was.
She does them fingers forward instead of the back of the hand. She does them
wow.
full like Dio. Which, by the way, if a Democrat standing over a gravesite in Arlington threw the horns, even if that was how their unit did it, the idea, would be that they're worshiping Satan or something. But never mind.
Oh yeah.
So Trump goes in, takes all these pictures with these folks. They video the whole thing. They film the whole thing. Somebody at Arlington, you're not allowed to film or video in any of the in the Section 60, the area where people are, the newly dead, the people who've died most recently. You're not supposed to film there or take pictures, and you can't use, no matter whether you do or not, you cannot use it for political ads or anything political, or publicize them in any way, any of that stuff. So a person working for Arlington Cemetery tried to stop them from doing that, and they were pushed out of the way. This woman was pushed out of the way by Trump staff because they were going to do it anyways. Like, she was trying to get them to stop filming, like Janos Poha in front of the portrait of Vigo. Stop! All slides are available in the gift shop. Ah! And but this, and she's not going to press charges because she's afraid of death threats from maggots, which is a reasonable belief. And right as Donald Trump, the news is breaking that Donald Trump, broke the law, the Hatch Act, violated the Hatch Act, broke the law, filming in that area, and denials from his campaign, from Stephen Chung, his spokesperson, from Trump himself, from Vance and everyone. Right as they're all in the storm of doing it, his campaign releases a TikTok ad with him voicing over, set to music, him wandering around Arlington, placing the wreath, showing up, as a campaign ad. And there's two insidious things about this, besides the fact that Captain Bone Spurs shows up there, and all of a sudden, cares about people who died on the president's watch. 56 Americans died in Afghanistan during his time in office, and Donald Trump went. There were 96 returns of remains at Wright-Patterson or where you go and do that. Trump went to 4 of them. After the 4th one of the parents yelled at him, blamed him, said, "You're responsible for my child's death," and he stopped going. Pence went to the rest of them. Trump didn't go anymore. He missed 92 of them. Right? 90% of the dignified transfers of remains of our fallen soldiers that happened under Trump, he did not bother to show up. Okay. Now, on top of that, we've heard how the suckers and losers stuff, and the what's in it for them that he said overseas. And largely this was arranged as a photo op. This whole thing was arranged as a photo op to act as like a PR pushback on that. He loves the soldiers. Look, here he is with these families, and it's Biden who caused their suffering, right? Yeah. With his thumbs up picture, right? So he went there specifically because he was he was falling into a deficit as this story gained ground, or gained steam. He wanted to, his campaign was designing this moment, this whole thing, this whole charade to push back on the suckers and losers and what's in it for them stuff. And because oddly enough, his defense, Johnny Million, about it, which is who would say that, wasn't working, because he's also the guy, for the record, that said John McCain wasn't a hero because he was captured. That Donald Trump, let me be abundantly clear.
Oh, that was him. That's him.
Yeah. Donald Trump does not believe that POWs are heroes.
No, they're losers.
Especially, and he singles this one out, especially if they were prisoners of war They had an opportunity to leave. They could have been traded, but they refused to go because they stayed with their unit in the prisoner of war camp until everybody came home, which is what happened with John
Those are
McCain.
the real suckers.
Yeah, those are the. You could tell that guy just makes all kinds of bad decisions.
Yeah,
According
and
to,
the people who tout that line always say like John McCain got a lot of people killed. Dude, you do not know what you're talking about.
right, it's gross. It's gross. And again, the anybody who gets shot down in war is flying over an area where you can get shot down in war. Just I like it's and especially the fact that Donald Trump and his bone spurs and his deferments, and then his sons, he famously threatens to disown them if they want to join the military, which I think only Don Jr. toyed with at one point as like doing it for show, like Elvis, that they could get him a George W. Bush kind of soft gig was the idea. So the idea that he's there and actually caring about what happened to him after he has falsely taken credit for the VA Choice Act of 2014, which he did not sign into law. Barack Obama signed that into law, but he claims that he did over and over and over again. There is let me just say, Donald Trump, and because we're up against the break again, but Donald Trump is a loser. He will always be a loser. He's a lifelong loser. And you can tell that he was born to lose by how every time he finds an angle where he can cheat his way to the front of the line or bypass something, look like this like super pro-military president and sell himself as that, when he actively avoided service, I mean, and not for conscientious objector status, not because he thought the war was wrong, but he just bailed because that's what poor people do. That even when he tries to do that, he does this whole Arlington thing. His campaign sets this up. Corey Lewandowski and Stephen Chung and Stephen Miller arrange this whole thing. And it turns into one of the worst debacles in the history of Arlington, if not the worst debacle. This is the worst thing I've ever heard occur at Arlington Cemetery.
Same.
Hands
In my
down.
lifetime, definitely.
And certainly in terms of a campaign. And when I told you guys that he's on a hard fade and he's gonna keep screwing up and it's not gonna get better, it's not gonna get better. Trump is gonna, and to all the maggots that think he's gonna turn this around or that he's gonna stick the landing, it's not happening. He didn't do it before. He lost the popular vote both times.
I'm really interested because I totally believe you.
Yeah.
And every time he poops the bed, I'm like,
Yeah.
well, this is about as bad as it's gonna get.
Nope.
And he finds a way to make it really bad.
He's running against a lady of color. It's going to drive him nuts. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. Dude. Trump wants a 1 year.
Lip balm time.
Lip balm time. Trump wants to give people a year in jail for burning the flag. Is the newest thing.
Cool. So they're really into free speech then?
Yeah. So basically, Donald Trump is running on diminish the value, worth, and symbolism of the American flag. That's his ticket. And we'll talk about that when we come back. And then we're going to talk about J.D. Vance being like an amazing dud. Like just a dud.
Artist.
And it's so good. Like there's obviously a lot of okay, thank you. There's obviously a lot of this that they still think he can do some cleanup. He's got a purpose, and basically that's what he is. He's a mop behind Trump as he poops during the parade. But
Boston Brian just reminded us that in 2017 on a trip to Japan, the Trump team had
Hold on, I
to
can't hear you because
hide the USS John McCain with a full crew so that Trump didn't have to see the ship.
We're coming in, Johnny.
Sorry.
So, lots of talk this week about so much egg on the Trump campaign's face about the Arlington trip that I guess JD Vance, who has been, he's got a kind of a dual job right now, it seems, walking behind Trump in the parade with a pooper scooper, kind of cleaning up what he says afterwards. And the other seems to be normally you don't want your VP to do any damage.
They're taking that poop and throwing it throwing at people along the parade route.
Right, yeah, exactly. But what a great way to distract from your candidate pooping himself during the parade if the other guy is chucking it at kids on the sideline and go, here's your candy, right? So it seems like he has this second job, which is be more embarrassing than Trump, so you divert some of the attention away. As long as you're making headlines, nobody cares what it's about, buddy. That's that particular Republican way. And now there's a bunch of stuff, obviously, and Philip Bittner will be joining us in the second hour to talk about what's going on in Ukraine. So hang in there for that as well, including rumors that Sergei Lavrov is dead. Which, I mean, he looks that way. He's the Russian foreign minister who just threatened the United States with World War III. It'd be a bad look if he just had suffered gravity poisoning right after that. Because what does that say about the Russians' preparedness for battling the rest of the world, but or Putin's chances of surviving the next couple of months? But in the middle of this whole Arlington thing, one of the things that struck me about it was that Vance wasn't there with him. Now Vance, has attacked Walz's near quarter century of service in the National Guard, served him, by saying, by being the person who could do it, sort of, even though Trump doesn't have any problem attacking people's service, even though he never served and he avoided it, by the fact that Vance was in the Marines and he was a reporter and he was in Iraq and that you get. Thanks for your service. That's how most of the time everybody operates on our side of the aisle. It's very strange that Republicans are the ones that are showing up with like purple Band-Aids to mock John Kerry's service, and JD Vance is attacking Tim Walz, and none of us are attacking Vance's service in this, except maybe him servicing himself on a love seat. But hey now. But they've been trying to send him out to do a bunch of cleanup, to be the kind of like young, fresh MAGA face that there's a future for this movement. And somehow he manages to make it even worse. Somehow what he's talking about actually ends up being worse for the movement than Trump is. It's stunning because the bar is so low. So the two of them, one of the reasons why I think the right made such a big deal out of Harris and Walz's interview this week, where the two of them were together with Dana Bash, where no topics were off limits. Dana Bash could ask him about anything they want. And she had some pretty, she had questions that if you asked Trump the equivalent question about his policy, he would call her a nasty woman and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, what a nasty question. I've never been asked such
never been. Oh, never. Right? So one of the reasons I think they attack that so much, never mind the fact that they kind of use the idea that, ticket interviews, especially right out of the gate, are not strange at all. Appearing together is one of the first things. Like, even Trump did this every time he got a new general. He would do a sidecar meeting because people were on the right were scared that he he didn't know what was going on in the world. So they wanted him sitting next to a general so that people felt like he's got training wheels. So he's mad about that.
Yeah.
But on top of it, it's also part of the fact that not only are he and Vance no longer appearing together, especially post RFK, with all the rumors swirling that RFK will be the shadow VP and Vance will be sidelined as kind of a Dan Quayle or Ben Kingsley and Dave, where he's sent off, greetings from the president of Burundi, and he presents here's a mask and a spear, and they go in the Smithsonian, and I'll see you next week. Not only is there, there's those rumors about that, but the two of them just aren't, they don't vibe, for one. Not that J.D. Vance vibes with anybody, and Donald Trump has no interest in vibing with anybody. But I think it's largely, they just don't, they're not getting along. Trump doesn't like the damage that J.D. Vance has been doing. So sitting them next to each other and with a camera on them would be terrible optics right now. Yeah. And so better to make fun of, like, Harris and Walz have to do theirs together. We don't. To cover for the fact that they can't. That is, and watch for that, because I don't know when these guys will appear together again for the rest of the campaign. It's really odd. There's nothing on the schedule. There's no interview with the two of them together. There's no, I don't know, maybe what, November 3rd or 4th at a final rally someplace in Ohio, maybe, where he's just appearing with the senator from Ohio as far as he's concerned. It's bizarre. Yeah. But they're not going anywhere near each other. And most of the time when you see J.D. Vance being interviewed, he's either cleaning up something he said before, which is bad news for a VP candidate, or cleaning up something Trump just said. So today, for example, and this will, they won't even bother to clean this up, but this Donald Trump says he wants burning a flag is the proper way to display on the ground. If a flag is tattered and Smithsonian, you don't throw it in the trash. That's how it works. So I guess every Boy Scout in the country is going to jail. Lost Johnny Million there for a split second. And then is that the U.S. flag represents. Oh, there's Johnny. He's back. Gotcha. There. But you're back. So I was just saying the U.S. flag represents freedom. That is the essence of what it means. Even and especially to maggots and right wingers, they should, even though maybe that's the thing now, is now that it represents freedom for everybody. Now that Harris has reclaimed the word freedom, and they're just left, with their hollow interpretation of freedom, which is, freedom for me, none for you. That that now they're mad and they want to it's a reclamation process or whatever. But the 1-year mandatory thing for burning the flag means that you diminish the worth of the flag. I've said this for a long time, that the American flag is the Obi-Wan Kenobi of flags. Because it represents freedom, especially freedom of speech and freedom of expression, which is unique to our Constitution, because you have that, burning the flag makes it stronger. It's exactly the same. You can't burn the Russian flag in front of the Kremlin and get away with it. You can't burn the Chinese flag anywhere anybody sees you and get away with it, right? And relegating the U.S. flag to that kind of authoritarian reaction undermines its worth. It means that they have no idea. It shows that they have no idea what the flag stands for. Now, no one's surprised by that, because Donald Trump is ultimately a monarchist. He believes that he will be king and he will pass it to his daughter, who is married to the son of another kingdom, and she will run it and control it until, her son or her progeny takes over because Don and Eric are too stupid, and in the great Game of Thrones storyline, they'll be, I don't know, relegated to some ice cave for morons. But he doesn't view the American flag as a symbol of the values that are in the Constitution. He views it as a territorial flag, like everything else. In the same way that a lot of MAGA supporters think America is a resource economy, that we produce that the fact that we export more oil than any other country in the world, and that we produce more oil in the world, means that we are an oil country. It doesn't. That's not even a major part of our economy. Even at that level, our economy is so huge. Oil certainly charts, but is not pivotal. We could phase it out, and it would be replaced with even more lucrative and beneficial technologies. But Donald Trump doesn't know that, and maggots don't seem to know that, and so drill, baby, drill. And we're the party of common sense, and you need a border because America needs to be a gated community, is really the attitude. I mean, this is build that wall is this close to America the country club. That's where that mentality comes from.
Yeah.
And again, it also assumes that walls are a perfect solution to an imperfect problem, which is kind of the dumber part. And I've said this many times, and I know occasionally, especially on the radio show in the afternoon, and by the way, thanks to everybody who's watching on infotainmentwars.com or at twitch.tv/HalSparks or on Twitter or on Facebook. Hi, folks. I know that we have, the occasional maggot troll or bot crowd that comes in. And to those folks, I would like them to take some time out and explore the change in geography caused by the wall, the creation of the access road for the construction of the wall that goes all the way to the end of the construction space, where it dead ends into private land or it dead ends into Indian land, where we don't have the right to continue the wall, even if we wanted to, without eminent domain or massive lawsuits, which Trump never tried to even implement, much less had a chance of winning. That before, there were basically cliffs and fences or ragged, jagged riverbank, and then a fence. But when you put a wall in there and you put a foundation in, you can't just do that from one direction. You have to do it in two. You need a flat, level piece of ground on both sides of it, measured out so that it doesn't fall over. So it doesn't just you build a wall and then it falls into the river. You have to, you have to move it in a little bit, which foreshortens the American border. So Donald Trump is the first president that's given territory to Mexico since the Mexico-American War. It may be in feet and in meters, but still. And what he created there, because of how the construction was done, was a clean access road on both sides. One of the reasons why you see that footage of people running up to the wall is because that was an area where they couldn't run it before. They'd had to climb or carry things. Now you can roll a roller bag all the way the length of the wall down to the area where it stops on private land and just walk around the damn thing. And you couldn't do that when it was a fence. That's how stupid Donald Trump is. That's how his common sense approach undermines the actual plan that he is, the problem that he believes exists. And that's where the false evidence that appears real idea falls apart, because there's genuine evidence that you need a functioning border so you can have adjudicate people who are here for asylum versus economic migrants versus people who deserve green cards versus people who are engaging in illicit behavior, whether it's trafficking in guns, drugs, or people. You have to be able to measure those things. There is nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing racist about that. The reason the wall is racist in that regard is that it's a one-stop shop. Anybody brown coming north, I don't believe anything they say. Asylum be damned, and everybody's a murderer. Everybody's from a mental institution. Everybody's from a jail, and men, women, children, I don't care.
And asylums.
Yes, and asylums, right, because people seeking asylum must have come from insane asylums, which is a step above mental institution because he's an idiot. But I wish maggots with their common sense approach would dive into why would anybody build a road where there was none along the entire south side of the border, all the way to gaps in the wall itself and gaps in the barrier, gaps that the U.S. government cannot control, mainly Indian land and private land. Why would you do that? Why would you make it easier to traverse? Why would you spend billions of dollars flattening the ground and making it easy for caravans, which you are alleging are walking here, easier for them to go around the barrier? Whereas before, they had no hope of doing it because they had, young'uns with them and children and people in all kinds of situations. Couldn't make the trip over that territory. Now they can. Now you could ride a skateboard down the damn thing. Why would you do that? Unless you're an idiot or you just are going for the symbol of it all. And that's what Trump is all about. He is a symbolic president who does not understand any of the symbols he is selling, be it the flag or the wall or wealth. He doesn't even gold plate stuff. He gold paints things. That should tell you something, too. Trump is the kind of guy in the Old West who would give you a gold coin and you would bite it and it would be a piece of wood. We'll be back right after this.
I will be right back, Mr. Hale.
Trying to find the details on Lavrov's potential death. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Welcome back. So, rumors. The trending topic is rumors swirl around Lavrov's death. Sergei Lavrov last week was the person who apparently carried the message from Vladimir Putin. Who, I guess, has anybody checked on him lately? That says that threatened that the U.S. was playing with fire because Ukraine invaded Russia after Russia has been invading Ukraine for a decade. But how dare they fight back on their own land? So I'll when we check in with Phil after the next break, perhaps there'll be something on this. But I want to talk about the master of media at this point, and I want to talk about the fact that the Harris Walls interview was very good this week. She addressed a lot of things. She sort of cleared the decks, and I think my favorite part of it was when they addressed his grotesque comments about whether or not she turned black at some point. Right? Which again, think about this. This is not something he was on tape saying randomly. This is the kind of thing you'd hear a politician had said it in the cloakroom of the Senate at one point, and somebody was recording, and they have a audio.
Right, no, he repeated it like 6 times into a microphone.
It's an actual campaign point. Like they workshopped it, thinking this'll do the trick. It's that bad. It's that insane. It's that grotesque.
He couldn't stop saying it.
No, and it was abundantly clear that if they did workshop it on the plane when he was flying into some place with whoever is the id whisperer on Trump Force None, that he he tried it, and the response was awful. Like nobody, like even in the audience, of his, obviously maggots will cheer for almost anything. It was relative silence, and then almost immediate pushback from everybody who was, one of these like audience of one performers that goes on Fox News or Newsmax and tries to dance in front of him because he won't take a meeting with them. But they're like, stop doing this. They're not, without fail, every single one of them was jumping in front of every camera they could find. RSBN, every podcast his son watches, on Don Jr.'s own podcast. Like, I don't know if this is helpful. Like, even talking straight to Don Jr., they're kind of tap dancing around, like, get him to stop. And there was a panel discussion, about dealing largely with the Arlington thing on Chris Wallace's show. And I guess the underlying theme lately has been that Trump just keeps stepping in it, unprovoked. And it has to be.
Yeah, there's no gotcha questions.
No.
But he volunteers idiocy.
Yes. It's, and it's not even like he's surrounded constantly by idiot sycophant podcasters who will ask him untoward, gross, racist, sexist, bigoted questions, right? We know this. There's no shortage of those guys in his circle, okay? And so there are a bunch of people where you wouldn't be surprised if he sat down with, somebody who's Joe Rogan adjacent, right? And they asked him this question. He gave a gross answer like he's saying on stage to their prompt because he tries to fit in and he wants to be all butch and whatever his reasoning is for kind of selling this to everybody, his macho-ness about this, his macho behavior. And yet, he's doing all of these things without anybody provoking him, without anybody setting this up, as if it's like Donald Trump is starring in his own true crime podcast. That, Donald Trump, the disorganized crime boss, it's the Godfather meets the Pink Panther. Evil that's as really, dumb as Clouseau.
Really dead on.
Yeah, he is a disorganized crime boss. If he was the head of one of the Italian families back in the day that ran New York when Rudy Giuliani was brooming a bunch of them out so that the Russians and the Chinese could move in, don't get me started. And boy, did that pay off for a while. Honestly, we would have been hearing a story about Donald Trump being, dusted off in a restaurant over a plate of, like fried oysters or something, in Fradiavo sauce or something, because he's nothing if not a liability, and his ignorance and lack of strategy. He literally found the perfect industry in New York real estate to be born rich into and then just leverage. Because I've said this before, but one of the reasons why New York for the longest time didn't go after their real estate, the crime around real estate, the money laundering, the mob stuff, all that stuff, the reason they didn't do it is because it was so permeate in every part of it. You couldn't build a building without being mobbed up. And Donald Trump dove in, famously building as steel buildings were being built all over New York. Trump decides, when the mob owns the concrete industry, decides to make the largest concrete building in Uptown, which is Trump Tower, focusing on it being a concrete column building as opposed to being, a steel design. Never mind the fact that the steel that is in the building is Chinese steel, and specifically so. But he chose to use that much concrete so he could get in good with the mob.
Mm-hmm.
So, and even still, with that, because if they ever pulled the thread in New York, they were worried that it would just tear the whole place down, that the entire substructure of New York real estate and the business world and all that, because it would all be tied together, would fall apart. That's why they didn't go after the mob a lot, because they had their hands in so many legit pies that they were afraid that would destroy regular businesses in the process. And they're absolutely right. The control they have over bodegas and friggin' corner stores and half the businesses in Times Square, dealing with these like foreign LLCs and laundered money and all kinds of stuff. Like nobody could afford to look under the rock because it was just a giant hole full of, it was like the tunnel in Temple of Doom, the bug tunnel. Like it's just, you just walk in and that's your next 10 years. So Trump himself, in being mobbed up in New York real estate and being tied to all this Russian money and that kind of stuff, was in a perfect situation where people just didn't want to look. Right? And if he hadn't run for president, they might never have. But he had to do it. He was so shamed by Obama and he's so offended by a woman being president that he had to run. And he could not just, couldn't keep his powder dry with his fellow Republicans. So he managed to destroy a bunch of them in the process and turn them into toadies, or reveal them as toadies, I suppose is more apt. And so now we're in a situation where, Donald Trump is in a trap of his own making. And the idea that he's somehow going to pull this out at the last second, he didn't do that in 2016. He lost the popular vote. He only won 3 states that gave him the Electoral College because of people on our side of the aisle that didn't vote, that stood down, that said what could happen. And now,
his emails.
Yeah, well, and butter emails, right. But, and this is he was an unknown entity at the time. He is no longer an unknown entity. And not only that, but if the answer to the question is what's the worst that could happen, is that women are second-class citizens in the United States of America right now. As you and I speak, women have to choose what rights they want by what state they live in, and men do not. Women are second-class citizens in our country because of decisions that voters made in 2016 in 3 states. 75,000 votes made the difference between him getting in and stacking that court with conservatives that gutted Roe. And if you think they're not going to listen to Mike Lee, who's one of the biggest Trumpies in the Senate, if you don't think they're going to get rid of Social Security, Medicare and Medicaid, every welfare program, every college program, every social support program that exists through the federal government will be gutted and destroyed. And never mind that, EPA, the FDA, the CDC, the Department of Education. Why do we have a national highway system? Why not have a DOT? Why do we bother to have a DOT, rather? We'll be back right after this with Philip Ittner live from Ukraine. It's the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Okay, and then dink, and then I got to bring everybody in and redo this guy. There we go. There's Jenna, and then hold on 1 second. We'll bring in Phil.
Andreas, and you hear me said that meow Phil is having electrical areas.
Mm-hmm. Hey, there you are. Can you hear us okay, Phil?
Hey, yep.
Excellent.
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep. All good. Thanks.
Yes,
okay.
perfectly.
Ding dong, the witch is dead. The good witch, the witch is dead. I don't know if you've heard, but the allegedly Sergei Lavrov is dead. Rumor has it. Well, Phil,
wow.
Phil,
yeah, I've heard the rumor. Is it confirmed?
No,
I haven't seen
of course
it confirmed.
Not. No, I have not seen it confirmed either.
Yeah, I heard it, but I'm wondering if it's confirmed.
Nope. I haven't. I've been looking around for it to be confirmed.
No, not confirmed.
I mean, he's lived whatever 8 years past the oldest Russians that live that aren't just like, on a poverty quotient because they couldn't afford vodka or cigarettes.
Oh, he can. He'll find a way. Hold on, I'm going to swap. I think I might have a stronger signal on another hotspot. Give me 1 quick second.
Okay, you sound all right.
Okay.
Any better?
Hold on 1 second. Oh, he went away. So the answer would be no, I guess.
Yeah.
There he is. Oh, hold on. Yep, there you are.
Seems better on my end.
Yep, it's good. Yeah.
Okay. I thought that might be better. Okay. Yeah, no power. Again, as you can tell by Olga.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I always watch for Olga. To be lit.
My lovely beloved Olga. Why don't you
Mm-hmm.
give me good news?
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that or not. I mean, even if he is dead, it could be because of his lifestyle.
Yeah.
The dude drank and
Oh yeah.
smoked, and he
Absolutely.
was a hard living guy. He is a hard living guy.
He
Presuming
looks
he is
awful, right? All the time,
dead. Yeah, he does.
right? He just
He
looks
really
terrible.
does.
Like
And I'm sure his vices are. I'm sure his vices
oh,
are not just booze
no
and
way.
cigarettes.
Yeah.
One of these days, I'll tell you the story about the pouch, the embassy pouch that was found, I think, in Bolivia
Oh yeah.
or in Colombia. Russian embassy pouch.
Uh-huh.
Yep, filled with marching powder.
Oh right, sure.
Headed for Maria Zakharova, apparently.
Huh.
So, and she's his right hand man.
Right, right.
I'm sure she had other duties as well.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, like
sorry,
like the French translator in Inglorious Bastards that worked with Goebbels. Do you ever see you seen Inglorious Bastards?
I saw it. I don't
But
remember. I don't remember that part of it. But
Remember
yeah.
the scene where the French movie, the girl Shoshana meets Christopher Waltz, and has the cake, and they're sitting there talking about using her theater when this is years later when she's in France, and she's posing as the theater owner and all that kind of stuff. And
Right,
she meets,
I remember all that.
She meets Goebbels, and she shakes hands with the woman. Thank you.
I did
with the
hear
woman.
Chicago.
Yeah, when she shakes hands with the woman sitting next to her, and they do a cut to the two of them, her having sex with Goebbels and him, like a lot of gross screaming for about a split second. Yeah, that kind of like, yeah,
Yeah,
because it's basically
sure.
the idea. She knows exactly who this woman is, right?
I wouldn't put it past Maria.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Damn pus-faced little pimpstick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
So, welcome to the show. Philip Ittner joining us right now. And I guess we were discussing this during the break a little bit, but the swirling rumors about Sergei Lavrov possibly being dead, unconfirmed. But, I got to say, I think both of us agree, he's looked dead for a long time. Certainly,
Yeah.
certainly he's a soulless carcass of a man. But on top of that, it may be that he is actually beat feet from this mortal
He is
coil.
a hard living man.
Ooh.
He is a hard living man, and in this instance, normally when you see a high ranking Russian official suddenly drop dead, instantly you start thinking about getting pushed out of a window or drinking a cup of tea that wasn't prepared by himself, and
Right.
polonium.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
But in Lavrov's case, and I'm not saying. Firstly, we're not saying he's dead. That's unconfirmed.
Right. We don't know. Yeah.
But secondly, in his case, while it could be palace intrigue and the boyars' machinations,
Sure.
he is, let's say, a hard drinking, hard smoking, hard living kind of guy. I saw him in action for about a year during the Iran nuclear talks in Geneva. The various rounds of talks for the Iranian nuke deal, and he was there constantly with his, at the time, press secretary Maria Zakharova. And he I remember in our live shot position, which overlooked the pool at the Intercontinental Hotel in Geneva, was where Kerry and Lavrov used to have these like informal kind of like, let's walk around the pool kind of thing and have a chat. Kerry apparently and Lavrov got along personally on a one-to-one basis very well, back when Kerry was Secretary of State. But the one thing that you did see Lavrov doing as they were doing the kind of walking around the pool and discussing things was just chain smoking, just one after the next. It's just insane, just insane. But he is when he is at his prime, when he is at his best, he is an absolute force of nature. He's one of the world's best foreign dignitaries. Foreign diplomatic staff. He runs rings around the West when he's at his best.
Yeah.
He has not been at his best in a long, long time. And I've talked to people in American diplomatic circles and in Ukrainian diplomatic circles, and they all say the same thing to me, that, oh man, he's not bearing up under the strain very well. So it's entirely possible that he's just pushing himself and also feeling the consequences of what I'm sure he knows in his heart of hearts is a deplorable, despicable regime supporting this awful war. So I don't know if he is or not. The rumors have been swirling around for about 72 hours now.
Gotcha.
48 hours maybe.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen him.
Yeah.
So who knows?
Right.
Who knows? It would be a big deal because he is in Putin's very inner circle.
Gotcha. Yeah. And also I can't imagine that Putin is very happy with anybody on his team right now. So one of the things that I've talked about for a while is the fact that Russia uses MAD, mutual assured destruction, or the potential for it, as an umbrella under which they get to attack anybody they want, because anybody comes to their aid, we might nuke you. You got to let us kill whoever we want. You got to let us do it because we've got nukes. And therefore, unless you want a nuclear war, you got to let us do this to these people, right? And nobody until Ukraine has called them on this bluff. Nobody was going to do it with Chechnya because nobody cared. But there was some thought about it in Georgia. This is where they road tested this story, that if the West came to help Georgia in any way, that it would get worse. And then certainly they've been, running this idea since the little green men entered the Donbass in 2014. So one of the problems the Russians have is that the type of nuclear missile that they have, and this is, one of the stories we hear regularly, is that they're going to just do it. There's a bunch of tankies right now and a bunch of pro-Russian shills like Tim Pool and stuff on the internet who are dancing around the idea that we're the ones playing with fire, like Lavrov said, because they're all quoting him. That's why I'm bringing this up. They're all quoting him that we're playing with fire and that they could bring about a nuclear war in World War III. World War III being not occurring until a nuke is used is the idea, even though you could argue we're in World War III right now to some degree. Because of the coordination of forces and blah, blah, blah. But to maintain a nuclear missile, Russia would have to change out the fuel source, the hydrogen in the center of it, whatever, has to be, either replaced or, this sort of the center of the bomb itself has to really be a well-coordinated explosion for this to actually work in the first place. But they also have to replace some of the materials every 12 years. That means they'd have to go 3 cycles of maintenance since now in the 1990s, since the beginning of the 90s. If looking at the gear, is that outside your window, Phil? And
Yep.
Looking.
Sorry, I got to keep the window. I have no AC or anything.
No, I understand. No, I was just curious. Yeah, I was just curious if everything's well. But so let's say we're looking at the maintenance of gear around the Russian army and the failures of it, the rotten tires, the broken down vehicles, the lack of forethought about any of it. Is that there's an increasing belief, I think, around both our side and the Ukrainian side that Russia couldn't fire nukes if they wanted to. Never mind the fact that I don't know if they believe they can be targeted, because I think we dropped malware in them in the 90s when all this stuff happened because we didn't trust them. So I wouldn't trust firing them if I was Putin, because they might automatically shift and aim at me as they go. But the fact that they may not even work, and that the technology and all this graft, so Lavrov and the rest of these guys, part of the reason they, just like Xi Jinping does, they kick these guys to the curb or they kill them is because of corruption, right? They're selling off parts of it or whatever, even if it's just a strategic failure of the leadership, and they go, this guy was a corrupt, and I got to kill him and get rid of him because he's making me look bad and he's ruining the war effort. And it has nothing to do with the corruption, really. It's that the plan sucks, but you can't have that. So, is Lavrov in that level of people?
Yeah, I mean,
that would, be engaged in any of that kind of like graft and padding, or is he in Putin's like personal inner circle, and that's where his failure comes?
I think when it comes to Russia's war fighting capabilities, or its, he might be aware of it, but I don't think he's a participant. Lavrov has other places where he can skim off the top and make his little corrupt deals. He doesn't, leave that to Shoigu, leave that to whomever, Patrushev, or all these other. There are lots of people who are.
Whoops, we lost
in Russia. So, and as far as like the mutual assured destruction aspect of it, you certainly don't want to test that theory now, do you, with nukes? So, it's still going to linger. It's still going to be in the air. Now, finally, the last thing I'd like to say about that when it comes to the tankies and the guys who are like, oh, we can't push too far because into a corner and they're going to be forced to do this. It always ticks me off, this mentality.
Right. A little choppy for Phil, but that's
ability. It abdicates responsibility. We pushed Russia. Yeah, sorry, is it too bad?
Yeah, hang out 1 second. We're going to take a break. When we come back, hopefully the signal will have cleared up a little bit. Sometimes it's just a jumpy window of stuff. We're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, infotainmentwars.com. We don't need the documents. We got everything memorized.
I don't know if there's anything that I can do.
You're better. No, I think it's just a ruffle. Sometimes just the internet just ruffles.
Yeah.
It's not you. We just, don't attach to it until we can fix stuff. Because there are a lot of times when I try to fix stuff that has nothing to do with either your side or my side, and it just passes, just gremlins.
Yeah.
And Johnny, you're getting questions, right? Are you?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions. I don't have a ton yet.
Okay. I agree, Andrew. Thank you. Yes, the tritium, Greg. That's right. So Russia's tritium has to be changed out every 3 years. I didn't have a lot of time for that, that part of the storyline, but the fact that they have to swap out the tritium in their nuclear weapons every 12 years, I think that's its either its half-life or its its use as a fuel anyways, or as a catalyst. Is you can purify it, you can put it through a process and put it back in, and so it's not like they're going to run
20
out.
seconds.
Thank you. It's not like they're going to run out because they need to mine more. They can reuse it, but it's a real process. And the idea is that they aren't even educating people to be able to do it anymore in the country. Like the scientists have all split. So who the hell is doing this maintenance the last decade and a half? When Russia didn't think they were ever going to use it.
Attention. Stop what you're doing. Because we're coming back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
They went a little crazy with it, and I appreciate it.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So if you've got questions for Phil, please give them to Johnny Million in the chat and address him in there, and he'll ask Phil and the like. I think we already have one in there. Do we, Johnny? And then
yeah, I've actually got one from Boston Brian.
Oh, nice.
He is asking, what do you both think of the Vladimir Zelensky dismissing Mykola Oleshuk, the commander of the Ukrainian Air Force, after the recent F-16 crash?
Well, I think something went wrong on Monday with the massive attack, and whether it was something wrong with the air defense that may have mistook the F-16, or whether it was a problem with the F-16 itself. But something did not go right. He should not have been shot down, that F-16 pilot. So somebody had to, bear the responsibility. Somebody had to be put on the chopping block. I don't know as it will change their posture significantly, but that was not a good day. And losing that pilot in particular, who's currently his call sign is escaping me, but he was a compatriot of Juice, one of the Ukraine's most famous pilots. And he was on the campaign or the advocacy trail in the United States to try and secure the F-16. So it wasn't just that they lost a pilot or an F-16. It's this guy he was a well-respected and well-regarded guy. So something didn't go right. The F-16 was by all reports operating quite well, knocking a lot of stuff out of the sky before this F-16 went down. I think he's credited with knocking down 2 cruise missiles and several drones.
Okay, several drones. Had a momentary hold there on Phil, but we'll have him back in just one second. That it's also not surprising they had a myriad of things as they switch over people, because the strategy is going to change. So it's not surprising that they would have that. Now, Phil, you might need to reconnect. I don't know if he can hear me right now, but he seems frozen on his end. Now, granted, he's in Kiev right now, so it's always difficult getting a signal out of there in that regard. And Johnny, maybe nope. Okay, almost had him. And Johnny, I don't know if there was another question in there that was teed up or anything I can answer in that regard either.
I do have a few. Some are very specific, but let's see. This week, Putin and the Russian media discussed invading the Baltics again as a good idea. They doubted NATO would risk losing troops to defend them. What's Phil's take? So what's Hal's take?
Yeah, they have rotated. Yeah, here, Phil will be back in just 1 second. There he is. He's back. Excellent. Hey, Phil. There you go. You good?
I'm afraid it's like this. I think it's just going to be like
completely
this
understandable.
tonight.
So the question Johnny just had for me. Hold on 1 second. The
pilot falls in behind the cruise missile, and he has to pace his speed with the cruise missile. And the thinking is that air defense in Kiev mistook the one object for the other, and so it was a bad show. It was just a bad event to have had happen, and somebody had to be held responsible, and so that's why he got the sack. I don't think it's going to change their posture, but it's not good.
Well, and we were talking just before you came in that restate the question as they read it, Johnny Million, so that Phil can hear it as well.
Exactly. So this is from Burrito Bowl. This week, Putin and the Russian media discussed invading the Baltics again as a good idea. They doubted NATO would risk losing troops to defend them. What's Phil's take?
No, of course we'd have Article 5. They're wrong. They're wrong, and they're bluffing. They're bluffing. They're not going to go for the Baltics.
No,
they're not going to put troops on the ground in the Baltics. It's
absurd,
foolhardy.
Yeah,
that would be a direct confrontation with NATO. And if we don't have Article 5 for even the smallest member of NATO, then we don't have Article 5 at all. So they're bluffing. It's a lot of hot air. They're not going to. And if they're stupid enough to do it, that's it. They're done. They're done. They can't defeat Ukraine.
Yeah.
With all due respect to Ukraine and the Ukrainian armed forces, but they can't take on Ukraine, and they're going to take on NATO,
right?
Which now is expanded. No,
also
it's absurd.
I also
It's
think there's a
it's
huge
an
argument
empty
about
threat.
the sort of slapdash nature of what people think the response will be from NATO, that it will be they fire something and we just it's all out war, and in a matter of an afternoon it's all over, like this kind of like a view of Joshua's test nuclear fight in war games, when quite frankly a lot of this stuff it has a lot of lead up to it. You got to move troops and all kinds of stuff to those areas. Once you start doing that, that starts building pressure in other areas. It also diverts, resources and personnel from places where they absolutely can't afford to lose them right now. And again,
Yeah.
Russia's over 600,000 lost in in fighting for the Donbass right now. And what's the result? They lost a piece of Russia. That's been the result. Russia lost 600,000 soldiers so they could lose a chunk of Russia.
This is what we discussed on this week's episode of On the Edge.
Great.
I have on with me this week.
Whoops. Hold on. Pausing again. This is part and parcel. The fact that he's in Kyiv. Say again. You have who on?
Yep. I think I'm coming back. Give
Yep.
me a quick second here. Yeah, I have on Stefan Korshak, who is the senior defense correspondent for the English language newspaper here, the Kiev Post. Very well respected. And we talk about this. Look, the Russians already have 2 theaters of war that they are engaged in. Internally in Kursk, which they haven't fully committed to, but they're going to have to deal with it in some way, and they're already they're having to put some of their forces there in the Ukraine to try and contain Ukraine's incursion into the Russian Federation. But then in addition to that, they're still trying to fight and gain ground in Ukraine's Donbass region. They're trying to push on to this kind of a city, small city, big town, Pokrovsk, which has got this strategic importance, all the rest of it. But they're bogged down in those 2 things, and they're having to make a choice between the devil and the deep blue sea. What do we do? Do we kick them out of Kursk, or do we keep an offensive in Donbass? And they can't handle that. Opening a 3rd theater of war in the Baltics, which would include a direct confrontation with NATO, no way, ain't gonna happen. This is hot air. It's they don't have the capacity.
No,
we really have got to start coming to terms with what Russia is capable of and what it's not capable of. And it's now maybe they're holding some stuff in reserve because they think there will be a direct confrontation with NATO. But I don't believe that. I think they are stretched. I think they're about as stretched as.
Why would they let,
as you mentioned?
Why would they let
they've
Ukraine
been decimated
drag on?
in this war.
Yeah. Why would they let the Ukraine war drag on if they had these assets in reserve? Because there's no purpose in that at all, unless they believe there's a NATO red line that they're afraid to cross. That they're afraid the West will respond, which has not been that hasn't been the threat. The West hasn't done that at all. The Europeans haven't said if you come into Kyiv, we're going to nuke Moscow the way they talk about it the other direction. So I don't know why you would even hold back if that's your momentary limit. Well, it's really curious.
It's this fear of the big bad bear, which is deeply, deeply, deeply entrenched in a lot of people's minds. This idea that of course Russia is this massive, formidable power. But it's just they're getting ground down in Donbass. They are making progress. Nobody's going to, and the Ukrainian armed forces are under incredible strain.
Yeah.
But, they're holding on in Kursk.
But part of the reason they're under incredible
they're not going to
strain
get dislodged from Kursk.
is because they opened a new front inside the invading country.
Yeah.
Like, they're not under incredible strain simply because they're holding a line and they're getting exhausted from holding a line. They opened up an entirely new front. They sent the 82nd and the 80th infantry groups, which are like their most advanced tactical
Some of their
groups.
Most experienced.
Yeah. And the most curious, I'm going to mispronounce his name. It's Syrski. The commander
General Syrski.
Yeah, General Syrski is the commander who arranged the Kursk offensive. This dude is he's going to be one of these people that we are talking about in history books for a very long time, because he's the guy who arranged all this stuff and shocked everybody, and he was given proper permission from the Ukrainian government to try this offensive. They organized it and arranged it under his direction, and they did not.
We talk about it.
Yes, they did not tell
We
the
talk
United
about
States.
it. I talk about it with Stefan.
It's great, yeah. So this, there were like maybe,
and I don't want to give too much away, but along these lines, I will say what we discussed in the show, which will be out tomorrow, hopefully, if the electricity works with me,
sure.
The internet, and I anticipate it will. We're already in kind of almost our final edit of it, but we talk about Syrskyi and what he did in launching the operation into Kursk, and it was very impressive. When you really get down to the nitty gritty about, and again, I don't want to give too much away because I want people to tune in. But one of the things that was really, really smart was he massed troops in the adjacent oblast on the other side of the border, on the Ukrainian side of the border. He started massing Ukrainian troops, but at the same time, he floated out information warfare saying that, the Ukrainians are terrified that the Russians are going to open up an offensive in Sumy from Kursk. That he made it look like the Ukrainian General Command thought that Russia was about to attack them and was falling for some sort of ruse, and so they were beefing up their defense in Sumy, when in fact they were massing troops for the invasion.
Mm-hmm.
So Russia looked at this and said, those foolish Ukrainians have fallen for some sort of idea that we're about to attack in Sumy. Let them waste their troops and position them up there. Ha, 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 how foolish of them. And then Syrskyi was like, well, actually, no, this wasn't a defensive posture because we thought you were going to invade. We're coming for you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just...
We found a gap in
boom.
their line.
The guy is a very talented commander.
Yeah, and so he
a bit of a hard case. He's kind of
you'd have to be
with absolutely. He knows his enemy, and he doesn't waste his troops needlessly. But if troops are meant to be used, he will.
Yeah. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. Commander. It's the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more Johnny Million. He's got a live stream, It's Johnny Million on YouTube and Twitch. And, of course, check out On the Edge, which is Philip Bittner's podcast. New episode every Sunday. We'll be back right after this. Sorry, hold on.
And what are the other
Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
What the hell is that?
That's an AI 70s radio jingle. It's the greatest.
Love it.
Yeah, I literally, I also made a Trump's diaper theme song. Hold on, where?
Got my swag on low. I'm a diaper superstar. Messing up the schedule, taking it too far. Never miss a moment. Staying on the go. When my pamper's full, my swagger's on a roll.
When my diaper's full, my swagger's on a roll. Yeah, it's Trump shitting
himself. I'm still angry. I'm still angry from Arlington. I get up every morning and no, I'm still so angry about that. I mean, and I shouldn't let it get to me. I shouldn't give him that power over me, but it just infuriates me so deeply. It's just beyond the pale.
Yeah,
and I get and the fact that I get pushback, by the way, because I don't have a large audience, but I've got enough where there are some nutters out there and some tankies and MAGA types to even try and defend him. The family invited him. Yeah, well, okay, great. Don't put out the pictures. Mm-hmm. Don't make a propaganda video and put it on TikTok. That's on you, buddy.
Yeah.
I'll get that out.
They were coming back.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Welcome back. So, let's grab another question before
that was much more. My head banging used to be much better when I had hair.
I understand. Yeah. Don't worry, I can make up for it. When my hair's down.
All right.
Yeah.
I know you feel me, Johnny.
I do. I really do. I've got a question from Seattle, Susie Q, and she would like to know how your arm is doing.
It's better. It still hurts.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to hurt for a little while longer. The bicep is now the only thing that if I raise it too high, but it's healed. Thank you for asking.
Aww.
Excellent.
I've got one from 56 Nick Rich. They'd like to know if anything is being rationed there currently.
Rationed. Well, there was a period where we went through gasoline rationing, but that's not so much anymore. Is there anything that's been nothing extraordinary? I think maybe on an industrial level, there are people who are, when it comes to like, electronics or things that provide engineering for the electrical grid and things like that in a private capacity, those are probably being limited. And so that's why I say on an industrial level there may be some, but your average citizen isn't deprived of anything. I mean, our food stocks are not great. We're not getting foie gras or oysters from the Med, but it is what it is. It's
right.
Nothing is being to your average citizen, nothing is being deprived.
Good.
Nothing
Cool.
significant.
All right. And Johnny, do you have another one?
I do. I've got one from Lindsay Leiter asking for Phil. What do you think Ukraine will try to accomplish before the election/inauguration when it comes to battle strategy?
Well, I mean, November is a big deal. The election itself, because it'll determine how things go. If we elect Harris Wolfs, then we will have an administration that is legitimately pro-Ukrainian and will hopefully bring in a new, in particular, national security advisor, and maybe lift some of the limitations that have been put on Ukrainian armed forces about what they can hit and what they can't hit, how far they can fire into Russia and where they can't, and hopefully also accelerate and amplify the production of artillery rounds, another thing we talk about on Sunday's show. And obviously, if we get in Trump and Vance, both of whom have clear Kremlin leanings, Trump talks out of both sides of his mouth when it comes to this kind of stuff. So he does give occasional lip service to being supportive of Ukraine, but I don't believe him at all. I've been very vocal in my belief that he is compromised by the Kremlin. And while they may kind of play around with his support for Ukraine or his support for his punitive measures on Russia, I think that's all for show. When push comes to shove, Trump is owned by Putin. And then Vance is despicable and has openly been dismissive of support for Ukraine, even going so far as to refuse to meet with Zelensky at the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference, saying, "I already know everything I need to know about Ukraine." No, you don't, buddy.
Yeah.
So hopefully we do not get Trump Vance, and I don't think we will. We've discussed this many times, but that's up to us, the American electorate. So as far as the run up to the election itself, everybody's waiting for the other shoe to drop and being mindful of it. I don't think they're going to do anything like too crazy. I mean, they've already done the Kursk incursion, and they're going to hold on to that.
Right.
But I don't see them doing anything extra, out of that will cause like an October surprise sort of thing. After the election, I mean, the second we know how this thing is going to go, and hopefully it is decided and doesn't go to the courts or whatever, what have you, whatever machinations they're planning on doing. But if it does go the way we all hope it goes, and the election is decided in short order, then we can take it from there. And the second they know whether it's Trump or whether it's Harris, they will. And I'm sure they're making contingency plans right now.
Sure.
Because they may have to start rationing weaponry. They may have to start looking to European allies instead of Washington.
Well, the other question I think also that I don't think a lot of people factor in is that if, let's say, the United States, Jake Sullivan specifically, but the Biden administration saying, putting moratoriums on what Russia or Ukraine can do in terms of using stuff we give them inside Russia, that if Donald Trump becomes the leader and he's going to put limitations on them for everything, he's just going to cut them off, then why listen anymore? Why not just go ahead and use the stockpiles that they have inside Russia? What's the benefit of playing nice with the Trump organization if they're going to hang you out to dry? And I get Trump's message to the Ukrainians is,
I have your back, I have your heart, and I have every other part of your body.
Yes, he does.
That's an actual quote. That was
Yep, it is. Yep.
And so, anyways,
that's a weirdo.
Johnny, let's
Very
grab
weird,
another question if we have
one. I've got one this is from the Twitch side. I can't see who it's from though.
Mm-hmm.
Are the Ukrainian troops finding any Ukrainian children in Russia?
Probably.
Well, in Kursk, I mean, I don't know. Because they don't get sent to Kursk. Either they're kept in the occupied territories and are forced to become Russian citizens, as most people in the occupied territories in the Donbass are forced to become to relinquish their Ukrainian passport, to no longer speak Ukrainian. Children in schools are indoctrinated by Russian education, books and what have you. That's where the bulk of Ukrainian children who are suffering under Russia's occupation, they're really still in Donbass. They're in the occupied territories. There are those who are taken from their parents in a variety of different despicable ways. And I urge everybody to go look up the interview I did with Michaela Kuleba, who's in charge of trying to recover these kids. And the stories they tell are horrendous. When they are taken from their parents, stolen from their parents, if their parents refuse to bend the knee to Moscow, that's enough excuse for the Russians to take their children from them. What they do when they take children, or they take them from orphanages, they send them to the Far East. They send them to places where it's very difficult for maybe an extended Ukrainian family member to go out to, Ekaterinburg, or to go to Vladivostok, or, some of these really far-flung places. Right. And they will take the kids and put them there with Russian families. And it is ethnic cleansing. It's by definition, UN definition, it's a genocide. They're taking these kids away.
Yeah.
But they're making it very, very difficult. So I don't think Ukrainian soldiers are going to find kids that have been stolen, kidnapped, abducted from occupied territories in Kursk, because they're going to send them further. They're not just going to drop them on the other side of the border. That's their modus operandi generally. So I haven't heard any large numbers of kids that are being rescued in Kursk, sadly.
Yeah, I don't think, and from what we had heard, a lot of them were moved to St. Petersburg, or even Sochi, that kind of area, well back into the country.
Where the rich people are.
Yep.
Yeah, where the wealthy of the Russian, there are, I want to have a kid, I can pay a certain government apparatchik, and he'll give me a cute little Ukrainian baby, which I will turn into a good, faithful member of the Russian Empire. Mm-hmm. So you do see it in the power structure areas like, St. Petersburg, Moscow, and Sochi. But generally, when they're just putting them into the system, they're taken really far away.
Right. I'm continuing to look for any evidence I can find about Lavrov. But one of the things that comes up is, since the invasion into Kursk by Ukrainian forces, Lavrov's position has, obviously the rhetoric has ratcheted up, because he's very much sort of a Michael Flynn type or whatever. Just it's all bluster and scare without actually having anything to back it up in a lot of ways. But he said Russia does not negotiate over its own territory, which, by the way, is what they feel like Ukraine is. So everybody who's considering that there's going to be some sort of a peace deal or whatever, understand that the Kremlin, Putin in particular, but all the guys around him, believe Ukraine to be their own territory. They believe Chechnya and Georgia to be their own territory. Arguably, they believe that the Baltics are their own territory in the end, but they're not ready to go there yet. But when they say they're not ready to negotiate about their own territory, they mean the Donbass. They mean Crimea. They mean the rest of Ukraine as well. So it's always been a show with these guys. There's not going to be a settlement in that. I think we have 2 minutes before the next break. Do you have another question, Johnny, before we get to that we can get in before?
Well, before we move on to the next, real quick, before we move on, there is actually a slogan in the Kremlin that Putin puts forward: Russia's boundaries are limitless, or it's a rough translation. Russia has no boundaries is their concept. They really believe in empire. So yeah. Anyhow, go ahead. Question.
Yeah.
Sure thing. Yeah, this is from Twitch, the Central Scrutinizer. Do Russian people think Americans are stupid because we allow ourselves to be manipulated by Kremlin propaganda?
Russians think Americans are stupid for a variety of reasons. Mostly because they don't understand American optimism and spirit. They think it's naive, and the concept of democracy is a childish one. The concept of inalienable rights was created, manufactured by Masons, and was it Masons? I forget what the other thing is that they did. Probably welcome. Jews. They don't believe in these things. They're very, very cynical, and they think that our belief in the very tenets of our liberal democracy, our constitution, our court system, our elections, all of it is made up, fake, manufactured, that ultimately power and might makes right, and that anything that isn't that is foolishness, naivete, and stupidity. So that's how they look on Americans. As far as like us being susceptible to their mind games and their information warfare, I mean, they chuckle about it, but they're victims of it as well. So, and they kind of know it in their hearts of hearts. So I don't think they're necessarily thinking we're stupid because we fall for their games, because they fall for their own games too.
Right.
They're just kind of gleeful and rub their hands saying, look at how much chaos we're causing in America.
Right. Let's take a break, and then we'll have room on the other side of this for our final questions of the day. It's a House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, with Johnny Million and Philip Ittner. He's got a podcast that happens every Sunday called On the Edge. He's in Kyiv, and it's related to not just the financial and cost of the war or the personnel cost, but the emotional taxation that it takes on the people of Ukraine and what it means to them on a spiritual and national level too. So it's important to talk about the depth of this struggle beyond just the numbers on both sides at any given time. So it's a great place to go for that. We'll be back right after this. So that famous picture of Trump and Lavrov and what's the other guy, the other Russian dude who was in the Oval Office with him?
Kalimniak?
Yeah, Kalimniak. Yeah, if Lavrov is dead, that means 2 out of 3 of the guys in that picture have caked it. So that it means like Trump is the last person standing in that picture.
It's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah,
it's not a good countdown to be a part of.
Was it Kalimniak? Who was it? I think it was Kalimniak.
It's the big guy. He looks like the
big old fat Russian.
Yeah. He looks like the
jowly, very jowly.
He's the guy who looks like the Vogon leader in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The Vogon, the poet reading Vogon leader. He looks exactly like him. Yeah, I think it's even based on him. The makeup. Seriously.
There's a certain type of Russian who just loves their food, vodka, all that good stuff.
10 or 12 million votes more than that, more than anybody had ever got. We got the most votes of anybody, of any sitting president in history. And he beat us by a whisker. And it was a terrible thing. They used COVID to cheat, and it was a terrible thing. And then I watched, and I thought it was very, very sad because of, the election it brought great division to the country.
It was the election that brought great division to the country, not you gathering your fucking psycho lead.
We're back in 20.
Thank you. On the lawn and having them attack the Capitol to stop the count so that you could insert your fake electors that were illegal into the process and maintain power in like this. And again, the idiot coup. So we're so lucky it was run by dunces.
I am happy, you are happy. Let us be happy together. Whether the weather is cloudy or sunny, I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky. Let us get lucky together. Whether the weather is cloudy or breezy, I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you? Chugga chugga choo choo woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling. Let us smile together. Whether the weather is cloudy or stormy, I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
Yay! Hooray!
So I think, as far as real quick, if I may, point of order, Mr. Chairman, that if we're going to have some good news, a bit of a happy ending, is that even the Wall Street Journal is starting to run articles like crime is down, Harris is up, as far as the polling goes, and the story of it, and another one about how consumer sentiment around the economy is starting to creep up again, and it's been steadily going up. And since, one of the big holdouts, of course, is the interest rates and all that kind of stuff, and that the fact that the Fed is going to start lowering interest rates in September, which is going to, I've said it's very possible we could hit 45,000 on the stock market by the election, just by the amount of money that will flood back into the stock market once the interest rate goes down again, and people feel like this is another way of of investing their money and having a little extra movement. That's going to make that consumer number tick up even more, because people will see whether they participate in that activity, stock market and what have you, or whether they're borrowing money or not. They will see that activity around them and think, okay, things are headed in the right direction with the pandemic in the rearview mirror. And that's really what this is all about, like how far we're getting away from the pandemic behind us. So, yeah, that's good news across the board. Okay, so question, Johnny.
I find it hard to have a happy ending because I'm still so angry about Arlington. But anyhow.
Understood.
All right, so I've just got a couple more here. Andrea is, it sounds like they're trying to move a swing voter who believes that we're sending money to Ukraine and nobody keeps track of it. Can you ask Phil?
Oh, right.
That is not true. Firstly, we don't. The vast majority of the aid that we send to Ukraine is not in pallets of dollar bills. Mm-hmm. It is given to Lockheed Martin. It's getting into Raytheon and the employees of those companies. So that goes into American pockets. It's not like they're sending pallets of money like we did in Baghdad. What money is sent over here and the weaponry that then Raytheon or Lockheed Martin or whomever passes along here is very stringently audited. Right. To my knowledge, in the last couple of years, maybe 18 months, there have been 4 separate congressional missions here to run a very stringent audit. And they have always come back and said, no problem. The Ukrainians are not stupid. They know that if they get caught stealing money from what is given to them directly from America or from the West in general, that the spigot will be turned off. What does still happen is that this country has a very serious problem with corruption. But the corruption that is happening currently is stuff that isn't necessarily gifted or allocated from Western powers. Mm-hmm. They'll do stuff from internal stock. So it's food, it's uniforms, it's things like that, where we still find corruption. And by the way, the fact that we know that those things are happening means that the anti-corruption organizations in Ukraine are doing their job. I'm sure stuff is slipping by. There is a major problem with corruption here. But as far as what the West is giving to Ukraine, and also, by the way, the weapons that the West is giving to Ukraine is their very lifeblood. They're not. It would be counterproductive, even for the most cynical oligarch, to send a weapon system into some international black market. Would be one, counterproductive for himself if he wants to continue to live in his home country, and two, if he ever gets caught selling a Bradley fighting vehicle to Qatar, not that he would do that, that doesn't make sense, but for example, he'd be strung up. He'd be absolutely 100% strung up.
Yeah.
This country is unified and mobilized to defend its very existence. If an oligarch or somebody an officer who has access to Western weapons sells those on the black market and gets caught, he's done. He's going down for life. Okay? This is a life or death fight. So it's not happening. It certainly isn't happening on any kind of large scale. So, no. I between the audits and the fact that these weapons are essential for the very life and existence of Ukraine, they're not being wasted that way. The money that we're sending over here is being used properly.
Yeah. And I find it fascinating that
by and large,
the lack of you have a lot of Republicans especially who are on appropriations committees or what have you in the House in particular, who don't look into it specifically, who they can say, so they can lie and say, even though they're on a committee where they should know, they have access to this information.
That's right.
They won't do the job. They won't go to Ukraine with the groups, the congressional groups. They won't sit down and look at the material. They don't do any of the homework, and then they go, nobody knows where this money is being spent. No, you don't know because you are not looking because you don't want to know, so you can say, I have no idea where this money is being spent, and I'm on the committee. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's like saying,
Marjorie Taylor Greene could come over here. There are delegations that go
all the
aside
time.
from the audit delegations that come over here. There are congressional delegations over here all the time.
That's right.
She could come if she wanted to. She doesn't want to. Gates could come here if he wanted to.
Exactly.
Vance could come here if they do. They don't want to purposefully
because they know what they'll find out. They know they'll have to go back and lie.
Right.
So it's easier to lie about this gap in this ignorance as opposed to
it's deplorable.
Where being in a position where they are obviously aware of what's going on or they had access to the information and they don't know it. Because the problem is, if the money's being stolen and rerouted and all that kind of stuff, and you go over there and you can't find it, what good are you? Why are you on an oversight committee if you go over there and you've been saying there's all this horrible graft going on, but you have no idea where the money's going? What good are you? You know what I mean? Why send a blind Columbo over? What good are you in that situation? So the only other question is, if you got sent over there and you weren't able to find it, either it doesn't exist, and you're a liar, or it does exist and you suck. And so that's why they have
so angry that
yeah.
Ukrainians are dying and they're playing domestic politics.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's awful.
It's gross.
Get them out. Vote them out.
We got a couple of minutes left. So do we have any other questions left, Johnny? I
think I've got one last one from Christopher Bestlin. Do you think Kamala will push harder for weapons to Ukraine or be less supportive?
I think Kamala will be. She'll be more supportive. Would be my bet. I mean, she's been vocally supportive about it in her position as VP. Waltz has been very outspoken in his support for Ukraine. So, if Kamala wants to, concentrate on domestic, economic issues or, her housing project or all the rest, she could give Waltz the brief. I mean, that could be every VP gets a brief. Every VP gets a brief. Give Waltz, a guy with 24 years experience in the military, the Ukraine brief. I mean, I don't think she's going to abdicate everything to Waltz because this is a major issue. But what I will be happy when we get Trump in the rearview mirror, we will be much better allocated in a much better place to reassess our policy with Ukraine and hopefully do a better job. And what it really means, and again, this is something I talked with Stefan on this week's episode, is we need to start producing a lot more artillery.
Yeah.
We need to beef that up significantly. We need to give them drones, which we can do. We can give them drones right now. We can mass produce those.
Yeah.
And we need to give them 155 millimeter shells, which we're not giving in the numbers that we need to give. So I think that can happen, but we need to get Trump. and this breaks my heart every day that I have to tell my Ukrainian friends that, we have been a victim of a Russian attack in the form of Donald J. Trump. We are suffering from an attack on our body politic that came from the Kremlin. And the sooner we get rid of him, the sooner we can be more aggressive in doing something about this. This cannot fall into a forever war. And there's the potential for that happening. But if we are resolved and we get it together, we can definitely win here. The Russians can be beaten here, 100%. We just need to give the Ukrainians what it is that they need to have to fight, and that's drones and it's artillery. F-16s are great, Bradleys are great, all the tanks, all the ATACMs, all the Patriots. We could use a couple of more of those, absolutely, for defensive purposes. Monday was a very bad day. We got really shellacked real hard. I mean, they just got hit out in Kharkiv. The Kharkiv story. Sorry, this is supposed to be the happy ending, but this attack on Kharkiv is horrendous.
Yes,
they hit a kid. They hit a children's playground, man. I mean, come on. And if we could get a Patriot missile system out to Kharkiv, they could defend their airspace. They need to defend their airspace, and they need artillery. Absolutely. And we could do that. And once we beat Trump, I say we do it, and I hope we will.
Yeah, I also think that, again, the red line that Russia's talking about that came from Lavrov, allegedly, and we'll see what's happened with him. That red line will continue to get tested because there's no way the Ukrainians are going to back down from the land that they've taken in Kharkiv or in Kursk. I also think, in Kursk, and I also think that if they get in a situation where somebody uses a tactical nuke on Ukraine or something as defense against this attack in Kursk itself, what are the Ukrainians going to do? Retreat and go back home? They're going to push forward into Moscow, because once you've crossed that line, why would anybody hold back? Why would you get in a truck and drive back to your country if somebody was nuking it and you were 3 miles away from their capital and you could make it? It's absurd. So, anyways, we're out of time. Thank you so much. Philip Bittner, On the Edge, new episode
Thanks, everyone.
on Sunday. Johnny
Tune
Million,
in.
Live streaming. It's Johnny
Good
Million
one.
on Twitch
It's a
and
real good
YouTube.
one this week.
And I will see you guys next week. Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
There we go.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Chicago. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Thanks, Chicago.
And but for a couple of kerfuffles.
Now I can swear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, once we got the internet kind of solid, hopefully it's starting to get better. The electricity is slowly and surely starting to get better. They'll try and hit it again. But
yeah.
Well, I fuck everybody who is trying to defend Donald Trump at Arlington.
There's
in
very
case
few.
I didn't make that perfectly clear.
There are very few.
It's very few, and they have no ground to stand on. They have absolutely no ground to stand on. But I have been very outspoken. I spoke about it on Tom's show on Thursday. I spoke with you about it on Wednesday, and on social media, which is of course now an absolute septic tank. But especially one particular platform, which I've got to get off that thing. The people saying, "Oh, the families invited them." It's just like, no, man, that's not. What about all the other families who have people buried there? And I'm sorry for those families' loss, but that doesn't give them license to piss all over the other guys that are buried.
You can't get clearance from all of those.
So angry.
Well, they also have no clearance to give. Those families aren't in charge of that part of it. They can get, and again, if it would be one thing, if Trump's ads and his videos and stuff that he used on on TikTok was the family's pictures because they shared them with him, and he re-truthed or re-TikToked or retweeted something that they put together of it, it'd be one thing. But they clearly shot their own piece with their own photographers, their own videographers from a third point of view outside of him getting pictures with people, because that was the sales point. Here he is, look how lovely he is, getting a picture with these families that just want a picture with him because he's a man of the people, and they just want to be with him at the gravesite, giving a thumbs up over the grave of their dead
smiling
son.
like the Cheshire cat,
like a jackass.
Yeah, I had people hitting me. With, well, Biden took a campaign. Well, first off, it wasn't a campaign photograph. He was commander in chief, and he was being respectful. Look at the pictures of Biden in Arlington that they all point to. He is head bowed, hands clasped, reserved, respectful. Look at look at Trump grinning like the Cheshire cat with a thumbs up.
It looks like he's on QVC selling tombstones. It's the weirdest thing.
It's
weird veneer smile.
It crossed the line with me. I mean, look, I've never been a Trump supporter, and I see nothing good with Donald J. Trump being in the Oval. I even think he is an active agent of the Russians. Mm-hmm. So I got no love, never did. But this is something new. This is something altogether different, and it's wholly disqualified.
And the reaction to it is precisely that.
Military's pissed. Mm-hmm. Military is pissed. I mean, I covered American wars for well over a decade. I know a lot of people in uniform. They're really not happy. They're really angry, and rightfully so. They should be. It's just that makes me so angry.
Absolutely.
Nobody should get back into the position of commander in chief who does shit like that.
Right. Exactly.
Disqualifying.
Yeah.
Makes me so
anyways, I'll let you guys go. Thank you.
I shouldn't give him that power, but there it is.
No, it's aggravating.
So I'll see you on Wednesday.
Absolutely.
Hey, do check out this episode. You in particular might like this one, Hal. We talk about a lot of really good stuff.
Great.
I kind of stayed away from the battlefield reports and stuff like that, so we do kind of touch on that.
Right.
But Stefan is an extremely intelligent guy who has seen it all. He was an OSCE monitor in Donbass during the Minsk period.
Gotcha.
So he knows the extent of what's going on out there, and it's a good one. It's a good one.
Right.
Check it out.
Yep. Okay. Awesome.
Thanks, Johnny.
Thanks so much.
Take care.
Johnny.
See you, Hal.
See you
all
later.
Good seeing you. Glad you're feeling better.
Thanks. Bye, everybody. Oops, sorry, my little screen on there. Hold on. Yeah, this is the zoom and whoop. There we go. And thanks everybody so much. Please hit that like, that subscribe, that etc. And also, let me see if I can bring in the chat room as everybody's leaving, just so I can say hi to you guys as well. Bing, there you are. I love it. Takes a second for it to start populating. Much love to you guys. I was going to stay a little bit here and do my Project 2025 video here in LA, but I feel like I trust the internet back home better, so I'm going to hop in the car and drive back to Vegas and do the show later on this afternoon. So I may be online, probably depends on the timing of how long it takes me to get there, like 6, 7 tonight, dinner time, my time, to do the Project 2025 video for this weekend. Just so I'm not overlapping with other folks who are doing stuff. You can watch it at your leisure. It is not necessarily a timely video where you have to watch it live, because it's just part of that. But if you want to, feel free to join me, and I will see you guys later on this evening. All right. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.
Our country is being poisoned, and your schools and your children are suffering greatly because they're going into the classrooms, they're taking the seats, and they don't even speak English. It's crazy. And we have our people that aren't going into a classroom. We have students that were there last year that aren't allowed into the school this year. They're not allowed. It's crazy what's happening.